Thank you everybody for staying, and I've been reminded that there is wine to be had and that I should be really quick, so I'll do my best. So coming back to the issue that the symposium was trying to tackle, looking at ostensive communication and how generally it is viewed as a set of complex communicative intentions that we see again here, the idea is how pragmatic theories can explain what young children do without incurring cognitive complexity. Now, this is how I feel about this topic. So I want to start by acknowledging the courage of the speakers to tackle it head first when for most of us, the issue they've been investigating is something we've carefully tiptoed around, knowing it was there and trying to pretend that it would magically go away. So thank you for doing the work for us, basically. So what these talks have in common is the idea to refuse, to reject a position where complex meta-representational abilities would already be in place at the onset. Instead, in all three approaches, there's an assumption that for more minimal cognitive kit at the onset, and also all of these approaches allow for development towards more complex abilities. So this idea of moving from a view where these communicative meta-representational abilities might already be there to approaches that entail a gradual development, well, I think it's more interesting for us and also more plausible. So NEMA replaces the notion of meaning and N, the embedded notion you saw at the beginning of communicative intentions, by those of informing NN and marking NN, which don't require mental state attribution. And his approach rests on the concept of representational actions. So in this approach, we only need one meta-representation, which is already much simpler than what we have before, and that's a representation of external representations, and which is triggered by ostensive markers. These need not be inferred, they can be coded. There's also the possibility, I think, in various ways for development. One way that I think was clear in Nima's talk is this idea that theory of mind, as it develops, might augment both the type of external representation produced by the communicator, as well as the resources available to the audience to interpret the communicative acts. Now, Eduardo and Diana ground the early pragmatics theory on two pillars, an ostensive pillar and an inferential pillar. They focused on the ostensive pillar today. But at the beginning, for young children, the idea is that both these pillars are built on implicit pragmatic knowledge that has a procedural form. That enables them to say, for ostension in particular, that the young children's understanding of ostension is based on sensory motor representations and not on higher order communicative intentions. Again, this is a more minimal account, and what is particularly, I think, appealing in their approach is that they really try to tackle this idea of pragmatic development and bring to the fore this notion of representational redescriptions that will affect both the ostensive pillar and the inferential pillar, and will enable knowledge to become gradually more explicit, accessible, flexible, and that in turn will allow more sophisticated communication. Finally, Antonio presents a completely different perspective. He shifts from a psychological perspective to a socio-normative perspective, and their communication, the notion of communication itself and the explanation he provides is based on the concept of commitment, which is here analyzed as a social construct. In this model, intentions play no part. So there's no mentalization needed in this model, which is very practical from a developmental perspective. One thing I wanted to note is that this model would require the child to understand common ground, and generally common ground is construed as needing recursive mind reading steps. So in order for this model to function, it also needs to endorse some developmental account of common ground, which would have a simpler onset point. I mean, maybe one direction would be the one that Bone and Koyman provide. But in any case, this approach as well provides the opportunity for development through childhood. Now, I think Nima's proposal is compatible and with that of Eduardo's and Diana's to some degree. They're much closer. They share, I think, some assumptions. And Eduardo and Diana kind of pointed out how, in fact, some aspect of Nima's proposal could be directly integrated in their own theory. Antonio's approach is a different perspective altogether, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily incompatible, although the kind of bringing it together, I think, would need a bit more work. Now, I have some questions about the symposium as a whole. The first one is, well, after all, I've been doing pragmatics, including theoretical pragmatics, for a long time. And when I look at these approaches, my first question is, well, what does it mean for pragmatic theory? Changing what we see as being at the onset of pragmatics for children might lead to redefining pragmatics altogether. So we might want to adopt a completely different model of human communication, and I think that's what Antonio is proposing to do. Or we can go for a more minimalist model for adult communication. Maybe this is what Nima had in mind. At any rate, I would very much like to know what these models look like. After all, you know, Grice's notion of meaning and end was quite explanatory in many ways. It did quite well, and I think it did quite well for good reasons. So we want models that would be as good in explanation term. The third option is, of course, to keep a post-Gricean model of pragmatics that involves complex meta-representations. That solution might also have a kind of sub-solution that would be to say, well, in fact, we have a more minimalist model that we carry through from childhood that functions alongside the more complex adult model, in which case, when do we use each and why? And to finish, I have a whole set of questions on the developmental story. I mean, this is a developmental conference, so whatever it is that we end up as a model of communication for adults, how do we get there? So I recognize that Eduardo and Diana have made a huge step to try to address this and to address what would enable changes towards the adult model. But I wonder what Nima and Antonio would say about this. what would be the pressure to change? I mean, if we have a simpler model that does the job, why go for complex meta-representations? And I'm very interested in stages, ages, when would these changes occur? How would we see that they occur? What are the phenomena where we could even possibly test that changes occur? How does this pragmatic development interact with other cognitive abilities? Very clearly, I think, in subtext for both Eduardo and Nima had in mind that theory of mind might play a part there as well, but how exactly does it play a part, and is it the only cognitive ability that does? And then, of course, my own kind of area expertise, how would these changes map on the emergence of specific pragmatic phenomena, such as reference assignment, metaphor understanding, irony understanding, etc. So really, it's been wonderful to look at all this work, but I think it's just the beginning, and I'd like to see the rest.